You're with Laverne and I am with Squarepusher. Tom, welcome. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Come on, be honest. You're slightly hungover.
Okay, a bit worse for wear. I've been better.
Thank you very much for joining me on the show. So how's life at the moment? What are you up to? It's quite a busy time. Fair few gigs for you over the summer.
Yeah, been running about doing a lot of shows.
Okay.
Last couple of months. Yeah.
And did this lead to some celebratory drinks last night? Or
Yeah. That's the reason.
Okay.
Honest.
Okay. And the weather, the nice weather, which
that reason is also very much part of it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for battling through to play for us today. So there's lots I want to ask you about, but I suppose I should start with the latest record, Damage and Furies, which came out in April. It's your 14th album now.
Is it?
Yes.
You've counted.
I've counted.
Well, I stopped doing that a long time ago.
I mean, did you imagine that you would make it this far? Did you think this far down the road when you were starting out?
I don't really recall fantasising that far about the future, 20 years ago, thinking in 20 years' time, I'll be still... I mean, I was quite prepared for it all to fall flat on its face, after the first record. So.
And at what point did you realise that wasn't going to happen and that this was, a longer-term career?
I don't know. It could all happen next year, couldn't it? I don't know.
I don't see that happening. It seems to be strength to strength.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe that's how it appears from outside.
I guess that...
Doesn't feel like that to me.
Well, of course, it never does it, from the inside out?
But yeah, no, I mean, I'm just throwing everything at it, as much as I can. I'll always, I mean, the thing is, I'll play fast and loose with it. I'll just try things out. And that, I suppose, seems to, in that respect, I seem to be quite fortunate because I get away with it.
Yeah.
I just, basically... throw everything at it and think, well, it could fall flat on its face.
And the throwing everything is a real apt description of the latest record, because you are not messing about with this album. I mean,
really?
I read a quote from you that said, "Through this record, I aim to explore as forcefully as possible the hallucinatory, the nightmarish, and the brutally visceral capacities of electronic music." Mm-hmm. What made you want to take the album there?
Well, in truth, I feel that over the last 5 or 6 years, there's shall we say, a conservative trend in electronic music emerging, and I don't feel comfortable with that.
Right.
And I want to take a stand against it.
And where does that come from then?
The conservatism.
Yeah.
Desire to be popular, desire to keep your career, desire to keep your income, keep people happy.
Do you think part of it is the limit of the technology? Because I know that's something that
Not
bothers
at all.
you a bit.
I mean, I think that the technology is actually outrunning people's capacity to understand it.
Okay.
That's another problem. I think engenders a lack of experimental attitude, because the gear is I mean, there's so much technology now available to anyone who's interested in making electronic music, that it's I think harder and harder to get to the stage where you're a master of it, and I think that doesn't help.
Okay.
That certainly doesn't help.
So it's interesting you deciding to take the record to this kind of brutal place.
Yes.
And do you feel anger about that, about the fact that as you say, the scene generally is quite conservative?
Yeah, I'm angry. I don't look it.
You don't look at it. This genial, slightly hungover man in the corner.
I'm furious inside.
Oh, he's absolutely fuming.
Yeah.
Okay, so listen, I want to talk to you more about the record in a minute, but I know you're going to play 2 tracks for us today, Tom. What are we going to hear first?
So the first track is Store Eyeglass from the album. It's the first track from the album.
Excellent.
Do you want to know about the second one now?
No, you can tell me about the second one when we get to the second
temporarily.
one. Let's be in the moment. Let's experience this as we should. Right now, this is Squarepusher live on 6 Music. Over to you.
Okay. Shall I count it in? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. There you go.
Absolutely brilliant. That's blowing the cobwebs off. Yeah, Tom Jenkinson, Squarepusher. Thank you so much. That sounded amazing.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got some questions. Right, so I'm interested in this idea of you being irritated by the conservatism that is you see is as prevalent in electronic music at the moment. Who do you think is getting it right then? Where do you sit? Which music do you think is adventurous and is exploring, the edges and moving things forward?
Do you mean in the world of electronic music, or just
not necessarily? Because I'm
general?
wondering whether, if you think that that is a conservative world, maybe you're looking outside.
I suppose. Well, the substance of what I'm saying is that I feel electronic music is, by its nature, an area which is apt for experimentation. Mm-hmm. It's that the very instruments are built to be taken apart, to be looked at in this very lateral way. You know, the software is there for you to build up things which essentially, you know, conceptually at least, can achieve sounds that we've never heard before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I see, like, my perspective is that I see conservative activity everywhere in music, but I feel that electronic music, as I say, is an area which so apt for experimentation, and it seems that much sadder then that opportunity is being foregone. So,
who do you think that there is anybody that's getting it right? In any genre of music, in any
oh yeah,
area? Who do you look to for inspiration? Because I know you're interested in jazz. I know you're
I tend to. I think my outlook and my values are actually quite out of date. I'm working on principles of 40, 50 years ago, and actually that's where I tend to look for inspiration too. You know, the backbone of what I'm doing is I think probably makes more sense in the context of an era.
So would that be what sort of jazz from the 50s, 60s?
Yeah, that's certainly like the mentality embodied in that era, and that music is something I feel much more at home with.
It's interesting. So that freedom is really important to you. Is that what you think? Where you think music what it should be? It should be free.
Absolutely. For me, I mean, it's the essence of it. I mean, to me, for it to be turned into a commercial enterprise, and to be honest, that's how I interpret the world of music. Not entirely, but in the main, that's how I interpret what I see around me. It's a commercial enterprise. It's creating needs for things which are then sold on to consumers. I don't personally see that as a particularly positive and interesting way of looking at music.
Yeah, I think some music theorists call that
the culture industry.
Industrialized music and unindustrialized music.
Yeah.
So the idea with industrialized music is that you kind of create these elements that are, you know, you can replicate them, and you can kind of swap them out, and the music has a kind of predictability and a sureness of it. I think there's some good examples of that, though, right? There's, you know, I mean, like Motown.
That's
you can't get more industrialized than
Motown. That's the funny thing, you know, that once in a while that these processes, you know, it is the beauty of the situation, is that from a distance you think, crikey, you know, this situation is diabolical, and this is just all geared towards making money, and yet it doesn't in the end prevent beautiful things from happening. You know, that's the crazy thing about it.
So I was interested in this programming system that you've been building, because apparently you finished it quite recently, but you've been working on it since 2002, and it's called System 4.
Yeah.
Can you explain it in language?
Imaginative name, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm keen for you to just keep it simple, because I want to try and understand what it is, Tom.
Yeah. Well, it's broadly speaking, it's all happening here. That's what I was using for that piece
track
that we just heard. Yeah, exactly. The basic idea of it is that it's an open-ended system. So if I need to make an adjustment to it, if I need to modify it according to the needs of a particular piece of music, I'm not stuck. I can actually just get in there and rework the system so it accommodates the needs of that particular track. But then those modifications get left in place so that then they can be used on subsequent things. So it's a thing which is always growing, really, but partly in order to accommodate, as I say, the needs of particular compositions. There's also a desire to get away from the off-the-shelf culture of music gear. You know, that's something I think really does engulf electronic music, the kind of keeping up with the Joneses of, oh yeah, have you got this new software? Yeah, I've got that. Yeah, but have you got that? And this is better because this sounds better than that. And all that rubbish. I just don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, I really don't. I just want to build my own system that answers my needs. I'm not interested in getting involved in that stupid culture. Again, it's just a sort of consumerist thing that people think more about the equipment than actually what they should be doing with it.
The end result and the sound.
Yeah. It's really becoming. I mean, to my eyes, it's becoming worse and worse. It's that people care more about the gear than the actual music, and yet, for me, this, as interesting as it is to me, is only a tool.
Yeah.
And I'm insistent that I master it before I move on. It's all about keeping a degree of fluency, so that I can write tracks quickly, so I don't actually have to sit there and figure things out in real time. I can just treat it more like just playing a guitar, basically.
Yeah.
So you're not sitting there kind of going, I don't know how to use this, and where's the manual? And before you know it, all the inspiration's gone.
So is this this system, right? System 4, is this the only one in existence then, or will you be able to give it to other people, or you know?
Yeah. Well, this is it. You see, I'm in a bit of a quandary about that, because in some ways I'd like to make this public. But in another way, what I'd really like to do is encourage other people to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I haven't built. If I showed you this now, I mean, it's just not built to be self-explanatory. So
you'd have to talk us through it.
It would just
about mastered the VCS system in there.
Well, no, I mean, it's honestly, like, it's just not built for anyone to kind of. I know how it works.
Yeah.
Like, it really it would need a lot of work to make it a thing which, it would just annoy people. They think, oh yeah, I've got Squarepusher's gear, and then you're trying to use it, that doesn't work.
I think there's a part of you that is quite comfortable with annoying people, Tom.
Oh yeah. No.
There's
nothing wrong with that.
Listen,
it's a time-honoured tradition.
Exactly. It's brilliant to have you here. I'm glad we're keeping it light for you with your hangover. We've just done industrialised, non-industrialised music, technological determinism, and now your latest computer system. So it's just like a really casual chat.
It's music to my ears. Yeah, this is my casual mode.
I read that you didn't grow up in a massively musical household, but that your dad was quite interested in the way things worked and kind of tinkering with music equipment. Is that right?
Radios and jukeboxes and
things that made noise.
Things that made noise, yeah, and other stuff that also didn't make noises, but clocks, just bang into clocks.
Oh,
electronics.
That's a rhythm section, isn't it?
Well, I mean, it's all that polyphony and the interplay of all those different rhythms. I mean, it's quite fascinating when you've got 10 or 15 clocks all going at different speeds in a room.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Have you ever been to the clock gallery in the British Museum?
Yes.
It's amazing when you go in there at like half past or quarter past or whatever, and all the chimes start going off. It's absolutely brilliant. So did you pick up any useful knowledge that way? It's tempting to project that was the formative Squarepusher experience.
I suppose... Yes, I suppose some of the mentality of just pulling things apart, seeing how they work, see if you can get it working, if it's broken, and so on. Yeah, that just attitude of being fearless, pulling things apart and getting stuck in and trying to understand how it works. I mean, it led me to be. I mean, one of my first fads was electronics, so I suppose that was just carrying on that same kind of activity. And
was that your way into music then? Was it through that kind of tinkery electronic route, or did it happen another way? Well,
as much as anything, the radio thing. One of the first things I built was a radio, and obviously that fuels, as much as it fuels an interest in electronics, it also fuels interest in hearing what you hear on the radio, which is I was mainly listening to music and just tuning in and seeing what I could find and what excited me, and then recording it and making little compilations. And in a way, I think of those little tapes almost as a sort of a entry into composition, because you're putting things together and you're listening to things that you like and slicing bits up and putting that next to that. It's all very much of a piece with how you construct music.
Yeah, it's got a kind of musicality to it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Would you ever think about doing a radio show, doing something or putting something like curating some sort of music experience that isn't actual composition?
I don't know. I quite like the idea of. I mean, I don't know. I don't think I'm probably ideally suited to being a radio jock.
A jock?
No, I don't think that's really me.
I don't know, like, it depends, you know.
Yeah.
You've got
maybe sort of like alternative, slightly dysfunctional, wrong DJ.
DJ so far that's like everyone who works here. So I'm just, I'm just casting about to see if you fancy it.
Sounds like I'm ideally suited then, right?
It does, yeah. I think you'd fit in perfectly.
DJ Wrong.
Yeah. Oh, you've even got a name. This is
That's
perfect.
It's done.
So tell me a little bit about playing live, because I know you've been on what sounds like quite a punishing travelling schedule in the past few months. What's the live show like at the minute?
I don't know. I've never seen it. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. I'm the guy on the stage. I mean, everyone else has seen it. I just stand there facing the wrong way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
but as far as I understand it, it's good.
It's been getting the thumbs up.
That's what I like to tell the public right now. It's good.
So I know you're doing Love Box. We've got Boomtown Fair and a big Troxy date on the 24th of October as well. Yeah. You're going to be out and about playing live over the summer?
Yeah, there's loads of bits and pieces, yeah. Going to Sonar next weekend, and
Excellent.
There's something in Rome the following weekend.
Okay.
And just general bits and bobs.
And what do you like playing live? Is that an important part of your music to you?
I've got mixed feelings about it.
Yeah?
In all truth, yeah.
Why?
I mean, when I started doing Squarepusher gigs or whatever it was, electronic music solo shows, I used to try and set up behind the speaker stacks because I don't really want to be looked at particularly. And as well, you know, going to raves was a big inspiration for me doing electronic music. And in the early 90s, there wasn't that big cult of DJ personality fame garbage that there is now. The DJ was just someone over there, like, playing the tunes.
Right.
And the crowd was sort of more focused on itself, which is one of the things I really liked about it, as against the experience of playing at rock gigs and jazz, where you are on the stage and you are the focus.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to extend that mentality into performing electronic music, but promoters weren't ever very happy about it. So you've got to actually be on the stage.
Was that the bit and the bit where you did gigs in the dark?
Yeah. Dark or just fill the whole room with smoke so no one could see anything.
So that didn't go down well with promoters, right?
No. So I've sort of negotiated this middle ground where I go on stage now with things in my head.
Yes.
So that I'm kind of, you know, sort of figuratively speaking, sort of hidden away.
I mean, could you do the Kraftwerk thing? Because they built the robots, didn't they? So they could send them out so they could get back in the studio and get on with what they like doing.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility of a kind of
robo show?
Yeah.
As I like to call it.
Yeah. Is that on the slate? I mean, is that what else is in there? Because now, obviously System 4's finished.
Yeah,
What's System 5? Is that like a like a sort of like Frankenstein?
Yeah, you guessed right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a robot. Just one. I haven't got enough money for 3 or 4.
It's one of those drunk robots I saw on the internet earlier in the week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's doing other stuff as well as gigs.
If we can get it up
drinking
the stairs.
alcohol. I don't know how much that contributes to the quality of its performance.
No, but it's an interesting.
Probably makes it better.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? No, the Cartesian sense.
Well, I did do some music with robots. Sometime, about a year ago. He said.
Yeah.
That's my little conversation.
Tell me about that. Yeah, no, come on. That's
normally
given me a new jumping off point.
I've really got to go. At that point. Yeah, it was amazing. We hooked up with these people who built guitar and drum playing robots in Japan, and it was just a completely wonderful experience. These things are... the guitarist had something like 80 fingers, and the drummer was this sort of octopus-like entity that just play, beyond any things that no human being could play, which, in itself is, that doesn't mean it has any musical value, but I did try to explore music with with some musical value.
So were you in the middle of that playing with them?
No, I didn't do that. I mean, that was a possibility, but in the end, I mean, because these things had a limited life, just simply because of the budget that was required to maintain them and store them. I mean, the guitar thing was like 10 foot high, and so therefore it cost money to even just have it somewhere, let alone use it.
Yeah.
So we did what we could in the time which is embodied on that EP, called Music for Robots. And you can buy it in a shop near you. Actually, you probably can't because there aren't any anymore.
See, you are made for radio. You did a link there and everything.
Yeah.
So tell me, one of the things that's interesting about that, and I suppose it comes back to our earlier conversation, is this idea of, you know, where the value of music is. What is the most important thing about music to you? What's the thing that you connect with about music? Is it that it's adventurous? Is it that it's something you haven't heard before, so it's new? What is it? What is the thing that you love about it? Or what are you looking for?
There are so many things. I mean, there really are. It's really hard to break it down. You say one thing, you think, actually, no, it's not that. It's something else. And I think one of the main things, it gives continuity to my life. And I like the way that you can explore extreme emotional states in music without the danger incurred by situations which could generate them in other situations in life.
Yeah.
So it's such a multiplicity of things, though. I mean, it's hard to nail it down.
Well, that's reminded me of a thing I wanted to ask about Damaging Furies, actually, because obviously, you know, as we said earlier, you said this is kind of exploring very brutal emotional territory, and you know, it's quite angry, it's visceral. Is that something that can, when you're making a record that's within that kind of emotional frame, how do you stop it spilling over? How do you stop it getting into your head? Yeah.
Well, normal life is long gone for me. It just spills over. That's it. That's what I do. That's honestly, I mean, it's funny, but it isn't.
Oh.
Yeah, so it's just, that's my life.
So does that mean you just have to like lock yourself away for a bit when you make a record like that?
But I mean, there's at the same time, you do these things with a degree of detachment, and like any situation, its extremities gradually get rounded off, which is the thing I'm always fighting against, because you hear something, you know, it can be the most confrontational, extreme thing. If you hear it 100 times, it's hard for it to have that same impact the first time it has, and actually that's one of the, I think is one of the biggest challenges, is to make things which, as much as they can, retain that.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there's a particular way of doing it. You know, you can make music that, as it were, it retains its freshness. You know, that's a battle.
Okay, I mean, can you describe that? How you what? So you think there's a particular way that you do that, and what is that?
I mean, it's I suppose embodied in the compositions that I make. I mean, I don't know if I succeed at doing that in other people's eyes, but you know, the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? You know, you either agree or you don't. But I feel, you know, that there's a particular problem in electronic music because the gear is so oriented around making loops and things being repetitive, and you can get sucked into it and you think, oh, loop's wicked, man, and then just sit there all day going, yes, it's brilliant, and then at the end of the day you go, actually, it's just boring rubbish, and I'm completely fed up with it. So. But I think you've got to be aware of the way that the gear sucks you in and makes you basically be a demonstrator for it. Like if all computer sequences, they're all based on loop patterns. They're all based on things being repeated, copied, pasted, and it engenders that kind of approach to composition. Like a modular approach kind of thing. Well. Just such that, you know, you'll get units and just copy them across, duplicate them, and it, as I say, for me, the battle is to get away from that process of it bringing that loop-oriented mentality into the actual composition. It's useful to be able to loop things to figure things out, but ultimately, when you listen to a loop, your mind gradually switches off. I mean, that's you know, one of my major criticisms of electronic music. It just switches your brain off. I mean, I really do think that is terrible. I think it's almost, it's unfathomable. I don't get why people want to be numbed by music. I want the opposite. Yeah. I want it to keep people awake, keep people critical, thinking. I don't mind if they don't like what I do, but I would be upset if they found it had that sort of, as it were, numbing, deadening effect, because I've really that's what I strive against.
Well, there's absolutely no way that it does, as far as any of us are concerned. Listen, I'd love to hear another track from you. What's it going to be, Tom, before we let you go?
Next track is it's called The Modern Bass Guitar.
Okay, over to you. Squarepusher live on Six Music.
Okay. Countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.